The lights hit her face like a wave of heat. The stage was massive, too massive. 1,000 eyes locked onto her, scanning her every movement, some with curiosity, others with pity, a few with pure mockery. Clara Evans stood there, motionless. The microphone trembled slightly in her hand, though she tried to steady it. Her dress clung to her body like it didn't belong. She could hear the whispers, low, biting. Why is she even up there? Is this some kind of joke? For a moment her vision blurred, not from the spotlight, but from the memory of every time she was laughed at. Every mirror she avoided, every audition she never went to, every name she was called. Half-face, puppet girl, mistake, the host's voice echoed, and now a very special performance from Clara Evans. Silence. A single breath escaped her lips. Then the first note. But before we get to that moment, the moment that made the world stop, we have to go back to a quiet girl with a crooked smile who dared to believe that broken things could still make beautiful sounds. Because what you're about to hear isn't just a song. It's everything she never got to say. Before we dive deeper into Clara's incredible journey, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. These are real stories you won't find anywhere else. Raw, emotional, and unforgettable. Be part of a community that believes in second chances, silent battles, and voices that rise against all odds. Clara Evans was born in Ashland, a small town in eastern Kentucky where everybody knew everybody, and everybody talked. She was the only child of Robert, a construction worker with calloused hands and a quiet strength, and Linda, a high school English teacher who never stopped worrying. From the moment Clara arrived, life was different. She was diagnosed with Mobius syndrome, a rare condition that left her with partial facial paralysis. She couldn't smile, couldn't frown. Her eyes didn't blink in sync. The doctors called it manageable. The kids at school called it creepy. Growing up, Clara tried to disappear. She'd sit in the back of every class, pull her hoodie tight around her face, and walk quickly through the halls. Every reflection, store windows, bathroom mirrors, was a reminder that she didn't look like the others. And in a town where different meant wrong, Clara felt like a mistake walking, but there was one thing that made her feel whole: music. Her mother sang her to sleep every night, and those lullabies became Clara's secret world. By 10, she was sneaking into her room to sing quietly, mimicking every sound she heard on old records and YouTube videos. She loved how notes vibrated through her chest, how lyrics gave voice to feelings she couldn't show. Her voice wasn't powerful, it cracked sometimes, but it was honest. And in those moments, with headphones on and the door locked, Clara didn't feel broken. Still, no one knew she could sing. Not her parents, not her teachers. She hid it like a bruise. Linda, though loving, often warned her, "Sweetheart, you'll get hurt if you try too hard. The world isn't kind to girls like us." Robert was more hopeful, but his silence spoke louder than words. He didn't discourage her, but he didn't push her either. Clara's world was small, safe, until the day she saw a viral video of a blind girl playing piano on a national talent show. The girl stood in front of millions and didn't flinch. That night, Clara sat on her bed, headphones off, staring at the screen, tears streaming down her motionless cheeks. In that moment, something shifted. Maybe, just maybe, her voice mattered too, even if her face didn't move when she sang. That video changed everything. Clara watched it on repeat. This young blind girl, standing center stage, smiling, playing the piano, singing like her soul had never been told no. The audience wept. The judges stood. And Clara, she felt something she hadn't in years. Maybe that could be me. She didn't tell anyone, not even her parents, but that night she opened her old dusty notebook and wrote in shaky letters, "Someday I'll sing in front of people. Someday they'll see me." The next morning she walked through school different, same hoodie, same silence, but inside a fire. She started practicing in secret, late at night, under her covers with her phone flashlight on. She downloaded vocal training apps. She memorized lyrics like she used to memorize hiding spots. Her voice, soft and unpolished, started to take shape. A few weeks later, her high school music teacher, Mr. Whitmore, overheard her humming during lunch. He followed the sound to an empty classroom and stood outside, listening. When she turned around and saw him, she froze. "I'm sorry," she stammered. He smiled gently. "Don't be. That was beautiful." That moment lit her up. For the first time, someone saw not just her, but her voice. Mr. Whitmore encouraged her to audition for the regional youth talent show. "It's not about winning," he said. "It's about stepping forward." She hesitated. But 2 days later, she signed up. At night, Clara stood in front of her mirror, not looking at her face, but at her stance. She practiced breathing, tone, delivery. She chose a simple acoustic ballad that let her voice carry emotion without needing to impress. She didn't tell anyone at home until the week of the performance. Her father was proud. Her mother was afraid. "Are you sure, Clara? People can be cruel." "I know," Clara said quietly, "but I'm tired of hiding." The night of the show, the auditorium buzzed with energy. The hall was packed. Students, parents, strangers. Clara sat backstage, knees bouncing, fingers icy. She heard other performers, big voices, confident laughs. Then her name was called. She walked slowly onto the stage, microphone in hand, heart pounding. The moment she opened her mouth, her voice wavered. A few notes in, someone in the back chuckled. Then a whisper, then a louder laugh. Her throat tightened, her vision blurred. She lost the next line. It was like middle school all over again. She turned her back to the crowd and walked off stage before finishing the song. Clara didn't stop walking until she reached the back of the building, where the night air hit her face like a slap. Her chest heaved, not from running, but from shame. Her hands trembled as she pulled off the contestant badge from her shirt and let it fall to the ground. She had imagined this night so many times, how the crowd would fall silent, how they would listen, maybe even cry. Instead, they laughed. They laughed. She sat on the curb behind the auditorium, face buried in her hands. It wasn't just embarrassment, it was betrayal, by her own voice, by her hope, by the small piece of herself that had dared to believe she could be more. When her father found her, she couldn't speak. He didn't ask questions, he just sat beside her and handed her his jacket. The next day, she stayed home from school. Then the next. And the next. By Monday, the video was online. Someone had recorded the whole thing. "Cringe girl sings half a song," read the title. The comments were merciless. Was this a charity case? Her face looks like it gave up before she did. This is painful to watch. Clara deleted all her social media, turned off her phone. Even when her mum tried to comfort her, it only made things worse. Linda said all the wrong things. "Maybe it wasn't your moment. At least you tried. You're brave." Brave? Clara didn't feel brave. She felt stupid. Mr. Whitmore called, left voicemails, sent an email. She never responded. She stopped singing completely. The notebooks were shoved into the closet. Headphones gathered dust. Even music, once her sanctuary, felt like a cruel joke. Weeks passed, then months. At school, the incident became old news, but the stares never stopped. Whispers lingered when she walked by. Even teachers looked at her with that awkward kindness people reserve for the broken. One afternoon, Clara overheard Jessica Carter, one of the popular girls, mimicking her voice to a crowd near the lockers. "I'm Clara," Jessica sneered. "I sound like a dying cat." Laughter erupted. Clara kept walking, eyes fixed on the floor. She avoided everything that reminded her of the stage. Posters for upcoming talent shows, announcements on the PA, even commercials for singing competitions. The dream that once felt like a light inside her now felt like a wound. And the worst part wasn't the mockery. It was the silence that followed. The terrifying thought that maybe everyone had been right. Clara stopped speaking unless absolutely necessary. At school, she barely raised her hand. At home, Her answers were one-word replies. She moved like a shadow through her own life, unseen, unheard, unwanted. Mornings became battles. Waking up meant facing a world that had already made up its mind about her. She started skipping breakfast, then entire meals. Her clothes hung looser on her body, but no one seemed to notice, at least not in the way she needed them to. Her mother tried. Linda would knock on Clara's door, leave little notes on her dresser. "Still proud of you. You're enough. We love you." But they felt like band-aids on a broken bone. Her father, Robert, wasn't good with words, but sometimes she'd catch him standing outside her door listening. Once she heard him sigh and say to himself, "She used to sing all the time." Clara's room became a tomb, curtains always drawn, laptop always closed. The guitar in the corner collected dust. Her notebooks, once filled with lyrics and doodles, sat untouched under her bed. The silence was deafening. Not even music played anymore. She couldn't bear it. Every melody reminded her of what she lost, or maybe what she never had. The laughter from that night echoed constantly in her head. It followed her down hallways. It hid behind every glance. Even in dreams, she stood frozen on that stage, unable to speak, unable to sing, unable to move. She began to question everything. Why had she believed she could be different? Why had she ever thought her voice mattered? Why was she even here? There were nights she would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if the world would be better off without her. The thought wasn't loud. It was quiet, creeping. It didn't scream. It whispered. Maybe no one would notice. Maybe no one would care. One evening, Clara stood in front of the bathroom mirror. She traced her fingertips over the right side of her face, the side that never moved, never smiled. Her reflection looked back blankly, alien, wrong. "I hate you," she whispered, and for the first time, she meant it. The breaking point came on a cold Saturday afternoon. She had gone out for a short walk. Her mother insisted she get fresh air, but ended up sitting alone on a park bench for hours. Children laughed nearby. A couple passed, hand in hand. Music played faintly from someone's phone. Clara sat still, numb, hollow. When she returned home, her father was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at an old photo album. Without a word, he turned it toward her. It was a picture of Clara at age 6, standing in the living room, hair messy, mouth wide open mid-song, holding a plastic microphone. "You sang for hours that day," he said quietly. "You didn't care who was watching." Clara looked at the photo. That little girl with the crooked smile had believed the world was kind. She had believed her voice could fill a room. "I miss her," Robert added. Clara couldn't speak. Her throat tightened, tears welling. But the feeling that followed wasn't just pain. It was something deeper, grief for herself, for the part of her that was gone, for the version of her that had believed she was allowed to dream. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Clara lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The darkness felt heavier than usual, but then a strange thing happened. Under her door, a small envelope slid into the room. She got up, heart pounding, and picked it up. It was plain, no name. Inside, a single handwritten note. "You don't know me, but I saw your video, and it made me cry, not because you failed, but because you were brave enough to try. I have a cleft palate, and I've never dared to speak in public, but after watching you, I think I might. Please don't stop singing. The world needs you more than you know." No signature. Just that. Clara sat on the floor, note in hand, and cried harder than she had in months, not out of shame, but because, for the first time, she wasn't crying alone. If this moment is stirring something in you, if you've ever felt unseen or unheard, take a second to like this video and share your story in the comments. Your voice matters here, and sometimes speaking up in a small way is the first step toward healing something much bigger. The letter stayed under Clara's pillow for days. She read it every night before bed, tracing the words with her fingers, trying to believe them. "The world needs you more than you know." Could that be true? Could someone like her, flawed, broken, half-smiling, actually matter to someone else? She didn't answer that question right away. But something inside her began to shift. Not a grand cinematic transformation, just a flicker, a breath, the smallest seed of maybe. A week later, she opened her laptop for the first time in months. The screen glared bright, unfamiliar. Her fingers hesitated, then typed, "vocal warm-ups." The familiar sounds filled her headphones, and with them came something she hadn't felt in a long time: recognition. Her voice cracked, her throat was tight, but she sang anyway, quietly, just for her. The next day she found her old notebook. Pages wrinkled, corners torn. On the last page was the line she had written after watching The Blind Pianist. "Someday they'll see me." She read it twice, then added a word underneath, "again." She started singing every night. Nothing ambitious, simple songs, old songs, sometimes just humming. She didn't tell anyone. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about feeling again. When school resumed after winter break, Clara approached Mr. Whitmore after class. He looked stunned to see her. "I'm not ready for the stage," she said, "but I think I'd like to learn again, if you'll teach me." He smiled, like she had handed him the world. Their lessons were quiet, private. In the back room of the music department, every Thursday afternoon, Clara worked on breath control, pitch, posture. She still couldn't smile, but she could feel, and Mr. Whitmore helped her pour that emotion into every line. One afternoon, after a particularly raw session, he said, "You know, Clara, your voice isn't about perfection. It's about honesty. And when you sing like that, people listen." That night she sat on her bed and recorded herself singing. Just audio, no video, no face. She uploaded it to a private YouTube channel with no name, no description. Just a title, cover, anonymous. She didn't expect anything, but within days the video had over 1,000 views, then 5,000, then 10. Comments poured in. "This made me cry. Whoever you are, thank you. I felt this in my soul." Clara read every comment with disbelief. Not one mentioned her face. No one cared. They only heard her voice. And for the first time, she started to believe maybe that was enough. Clara didn't tell her parents about the YouTube channel. Not yet. It felt like a secret garden she had built with her own hands. Fragile, sacred. But the response lit something inside her that hadn't burned in a long time. Not just hope, but purpose. She began recording more covers, still anonymous, still only audio. Each upload brought more people, more stories in the comments. A girl with a stutter who wanted to try open mic. A boy who had stopped playing guitar after a stroke, but now felt inspired to start again. Strangers, scattered across the world, finding something in Clara's voice that made them feel seen. But Clara knew she couldn't hide forever. If her voice meant something to these people, maybe it was time to stop hiding her face too. It started small. She posted a short video, just a black screen fading into a silhouette of her sitting in front of a mic, barely visible. No introduction, just the music. The reaction was overwhelming. People begged to know more. "Please tell us who you are. You don't need to hide. You're already beautiful." She wasn't ready for that step yet, but she was getting closer. Then came the email. An organizer from a statewide youth conference had come across her videos. It was a weekend of workshops and performances about resilience and self-expression. "We'd love to have you sing. We don't care if it's audio only. Just having your voice there would mean the world." Clara read the email 5 times before responding. Then she did something she hadn't done in months. She walked into the living room and said, "Mom, Dad, I need to talk to you." She showed them the letter, played one of her recordings, watched their faces change as her voice filled the room. Her mom cried. Her dad didn't say much, just wrapped his arms around her like he had when she was little. They were hesitant when she told them she wanted to perform live, but they didn't say no. The next week, she went to her first vocal coaching session outside school. She worked on posture, breath, expression. The coach encouraged her to connect with her body, not fight it. "Your voice doesn't come in spite of your face," she said. "It comes through it." Clara also joined a local support group for young people with facial differences. They shared their fears, their victories. For the first time, she wasn't the only one in the room who knew what it was like to be stared at for simply existing. She kept practicing. Her voice grew stronger, but more than that, so did her presence. Her fear didn't disappear. It simply stopped controlling her. The night before the conference, she stood in front of the mirror again. Same crooked smile, same eyes that didn't blink together. But this time, she didn't look away. She said quietly, "You're going to be seen," and she meant it. The morning of the performance arrived with a strange calm. Clara expected panic, shaking hands, a voice caught in her throat. But instead, there was focus. Not because she wasn't afraid, she was, but because she had chosen to walk through the fear instead of away from it. The auditorium was modest compared to the one from her last performance, but still big enough to trigger every doubt. She arrived early, ran through her song once in the dressing room, then sat alone, listening to the muffled sounds of rehearsals echoing through the hallway. That's when the nerves hit. What if they laughed again? What if her voice cracked? What if stepping back into the light only meant being burned again? She clutched the small envelope she had brought with her, the anonymous letter that had changed everything. She had read it so many times, the paper was soft and frayed at the edges. She kept it with her, not as a shield, but as a reminder. She wasn't just doing this for herself. A knock at the door startled her. It was Mr. Whitmore. He had driven hours just to be there. He smiled. "No matter what happens up there, you already won." She nodded, holding back tears. "Thank you for seeing me before I did." Backstage, she paced, listened to the crowd shuffle in, heard the applause for the speaker before her. Then, just before she was called, her phone buzzed. A message from someone named Kyle Thompson. She almost ignored it, then opened it. It was a photo. A young man on stage at a poetry slam, microphone in hand, braces visible across his upper lip. The caption read, "I did it, because you did." Clara covered her mouth and let the tears fall silently. Her name was called. She walked onto the stage, not slowly, not timidly, but with intent. The lights were bright again, the faces were there again. But something was different. She wasn't there to prove anything. She was there to connect. She introduced herself simply. "My name is Clara Evans. I used to think my voice didn't belong on a stage like this, but someone reminded me that even broken things can still sing." Then she sang. The first note wavered, but then it settled. She sang not with volume, but with truth. Her voice carried not just melody, but memory, pain, strength, a story that had lived too long in silence. When the final note faded, the audience stood, not because she was perfect, but because she was real. Clara smiled, not fully, not evenly, but for the first time in her life it didn't matter. She had stepped into the light. And this time, she stayed. Clara barely remembered walking off stage. Her body moved, but her mind stayed with the song. She felt suspended in that final note, as if her voice had peeled open a door that had been locked for years. Backstage, people clapped her on the back, offered hugs, words she barely registered. "You were amazing. So powerful. I'll never forget that." But she just stood there, dazed, hands trembling, heart racing, not from fear but from something else, a kind of release, like she had finally exhaled after holding her breath for years. When she found a quiet corner, she sat down and closed her eyes. She let the moment settle into her bones. No laughter, no stares, no shame. Just the truth of what she had done. She had sung, fully, publicly, honestly. Her phone buzzed again. Hundreds of notifications, messages from people at the event, comments on her YouTube channel. Someone had recognized her and linked the performance. The video was already up. The caption read, "The girl who sang through her scars." It had gone viral within hours, thousands of views, then tens of thousands, then hundreds. But it wasn't the numbers that made her cry, it was the comments. Watching this helped me stand in front of my class today. My daughter has facial paralysis. She just saw you and said, "She looks like me." Thank you. I didn't think I could cry at a voice. But this was healing. She stayed up all night reading them, weeping softly into her pillow, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of strangers who saw her, not just heard her, but really saw her. The next morning, she opened an email from a talent manager in New York. He had seen the video and wanted to talk about potential opportunities, singing engagements, collaborations, press interviews. Clara stared at the screen, stunned. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she went downstairs where her parents were sitting at the kitchen table. They looked up at her, both tired, both teary-eyed. Her mother stood first, arms open. "We watched the whole thing." Clara walked into the hug, and for the first time in years, she didn't shrink. Her father joined them, his voice cracking. "That was your stage, Clara, and no one will ever take that from you again." Later that week, the school invited her to speak at an assembly, the same school where she had once run off stage in tears. She almost said no, but then she thought of the girl hiding in the back row, the boy who couldn't smile without being mocked, the version of herself who believed silence was safer. She walked onto that school stage with her head high. "I used to think I had to fix myself before I could be worth listening to," she told them. "But I was wrong. You don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You just need to be real." When she finished, no one laughed. They stood, applauded, some even cried. After the assembly, Jessica Carter, the same girl who once mimicked Clara's voice in the hallway, approached her. For a moment, Clara braced herself, but Jessica's expression wasn't smug. It was soft, nervous. I was awful to you," she said, "and I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that." Clara paused, took a breath. "You're right, I didn't," she said, "but thank you. It wasn't a clean ending. It didn't erase the past, but it was real, and it was enough." In the months that followed, Clara's story spread across the country. She appeared on talk shows, was invited to speak at advocacy panels, and even recorded her first original song, a track about finding voice through silence. But through it all, she stayed grounded, because the fame, the opportunities, the applause, they were never the point. The point was this: a girl who once believed her voice didn't matter had found it, nurtured it, and offered it to the world, not to be famous, but to be free. And in doing so, she gave others permission to do the same. Clara's smile would always be crooked. Her voice would always carry the weight of where it had been. But now, every word she sang echoed louder, deeper, stronger. Because it wasn't just music anymore. It was truth. And truth, once spoken, doesn't go back into hiding. Clara's journey taught something many people spend their entire lives trying to understand. That true strength isn't about overcoming your flaws. It's about embracing them. Her voice didn't become powerful because it was perfect. It became powerful because it was honest, raw, and human. In a world obsessed with filters, edits, and appearances, Clara stood as a reminder that vulnerability is not weakness. It's courage in its purest form. She didn't win over the world by changing who she was. She did it by standing still, by being exactly who she had always been, and daring to let others see her fully. Her story resonated so deeply because it wasn't just about music. It was about reclaiming identity. For years, Clara thought her disability was a barrier, something to hide, to be ashamed of. But when she stepped into her truth, it became her power. Not because it defined her, but because she refused to let it silence her. She reminded us that our most painful experiences often carry the seeds of our greatest purpose, and that healing doesn't always come with applause or viral videos. Sometimes it begins quietly, with a single act of defiance against the lies we've told ourselves. And sometimes that's enough to change everything. Today, Clara Evans is no longer just a voice behind a screen. She's a symbol, an advocate, a mentor. Her YouTube channel, once anonymous, now bears her full name and face, with pride. It has become a haven for others who never felt seen. She posts not just songs, but reflections, Q&As, messages to kids with facial differences, and raw moments where she still battles doubt and fear. Because Clara never pretended her healing was complete, only that it was real. She also launched a non-profit initiative called Sing Through the Silence, providing musical instruments, lessons, and therapy support for teens living with visible disabilities. The mission isn't to create stars. It's to remind each young person that their voice, no matter how different, is worthy of being heard. Schools invite her to speak, parents write her letters, teenagers reach out from around the world, sending photos, lyrics, stories, all inspired by the moment Clara stood on stage and sang anyway. But more than fame or recognition, Clara values something deeper: peace. The quiet knowledge that she didn't let the world define her, that she chose to speak when silence felt safer, that she gave pain a melody and turned fear into fuel. And in doing so, she gave thousands the courage to do the same. Have you ever felt like your voice didn't matter, like the world had already decided who you were supposed to be before you even had the chance to speak? Clara Evans's story isn't just about singing. It's about the power of choosing to show up, even when everything inside you says to hide. It's about finding the courage to turn pain into purpose and fear into fuel. So now we turn the question to you. What is the voice inside you that you've been hiding? In the comments, share your moment, the one where you almost gave up, or the one where you finally stood up. Your words might be the letter someone else is waiting to read, just like Clara's was. And if this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend, a family member, someone who needs to remember that being different isn't a weakness. It's a kind of strength the world desperately needs. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Stories that remind us the heaviest choices often lead to the most beautiful transformations, because sometimes all it takes is one voice that refuses to be silent.